If you love the idea of picking and growing your own fresh produce in the garden, but you lack the space, the Backyard Beauties range from PlantNet is the one to look out for. They're a selection of dwarf fruit trees which grow to 2 to 2.5 meters tall and 2 meters wide. But the other great thing about these trees is that their fruit is extremely large and pack-filled with flavour. The compact habit of these trees makes them very flexible to be grown in multiple conditions. They can be grown in pots for their entire lifetime with a little bit of care along the way. But they also can be planted directly into the soil, so you can have an orchard of fruit trees in the garden or by your back door. All fruit trees need a lot of sun to produce fruit that will be pack-filled with flavour and to achieve the best growth. Choose a position in the garden which will get a lot of sun, preferably all day sun is most ideal. Otherwise, a spot which is exposed to afternoon sun will also be sufficient. After choosing your fruit tree, you may be wanting to know how to plant it. I'm going to be showing you how to plant it into a large pot like this one and into the garden. There's a few different techniques needed to be successful when planting. Also, PlantNet recommends having a pot with a minimum diameter of 50 centimeters. This will allow your tree to grow in it for a lot longer and be a lot happier. Using a good quality potting mix is the secret to growing trees in pots successfully for long periods of time. A premium potting mix which usually contains water storing crystals, wetting agents and controlled release fertilizer is the one to look for. By adding 10 to 20% of loam soil will give the potting mix extra body and will assist with holding nutrients and water for longer, which in the long run your trees are going to love you for it. Most potting mixes have a reasonable pH, but it can be a good idea to test the soil just to make sure the pH is correct for your trees. The soil can be tested with a small pH testing kit which can be found in most garden centres. To get the best results for your trees, the soil should have a pH reading between 6 to 6.5. If the soil does need to be altered, the testing kit will come with directions on how you can alter the pH. Now is the fun part, and that's planting. What we're going to be doing first is placing a few inches of soil at the base of the pot before putting our tree into its new home. It's also a good idea not to place fertilizer in the base of your pot, as this can cause damage to the young roots. When repotting your fruit tree, it's really important to not tease the roots, as this could cause a lot of damage to the young feeder roots. The young feeder roots are the little white roots that you see down here, and they're responsible for taking up any nutrients and water consumption that the plant needs when establishing. Here is another tip for you. When potting your tree, make sure the trunk isn't buried under too much potting mix. The tree should be planted at a depth that makes it level with the soil surface of the potting mix. And then you want to put in any more soil that's needed and then press down firmly to push out any excess air out of the potting mix. Once you have finished planting, you can top dress the pots with some sugarcane mulch. This will encourage the soil to retain water for longer and prevent the soil from drying out. Water your tree in well with a generous amount of water. I have chosen this spot in the garden because it is bright and sunny, which is ideal for growing dwarf almonds like this one. But before buying your tree, make sure the ground is really well prepared a few months prior to planting. Adding pelletized poultry or composted horse or cow manures to the soil is one of the best things you can do to give your plants a head start. When adding manures, make sure to mix it into the pre-existing soil as best as possible. This is to make sure the soil is really well conditioned. In the garden, the soil pH can vary quite a lot, so just how we tested the potting mix's pH, it's a good idea to do the same thing in the garden. Our trees tend to like having a soil reading of 6 to 6.5, so that's what we'll be aiming for. Dig a hole that is twice the size and diameter of the pot that your plant is provided in. Another important step is to make sure that the tree isn't planted too deep. The tree should be planted at a depth that will be almost level with the soil surface. A trick whilst you're digging is to grab your tree and sit it in the hole to measure how much more soil might need to be removed. Remember, when planting your fruit trees, it's best not to tease those roots, as we don't want to damage the young feeder roots. When you're happy with the placement of your tree in its hole, backfill with excess soil and press the soil firmly to release any air pockets. Once you've finished planting, remember to add a layer of sugarcane mulch. If you live in a hot, dry climate, daily watering by hand or hose is necessary. But if you live in a cooler climate, watering every second day during summer should be enough. If you're looking for a fun way to bring the garden to your back door, or you might be looking for a smaller growing tree, check out the Backyard Beauties range. They look great styled in pots and in the garden, but best of all, they'll give you an abundance of fruit for many years to come.